So he went to DigiKey, and he spent a lot of, or DigiPen, not DigiKey, DigiPen, where he learned some game development there with the big dogs, and he shared some of that knowledge with us here in UNLV. And he currently has a job for Galaxy Gaming, doing what? You guessed it, making games. He's a good guy to go to because Unity isn't what he uses most. He uses, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but last I heard you were still using GameMaker a lot and trying out some other engines. So
yeah, Unity was my first engine, but I've used a lot. I actually still today I kind of technically used a proprietary engine called Zero the most because I used that for 4 or 5 years. But I've done a lot. I've made game engines from scratch. I've used pretty much every game engine under the sun, at least a little bit. But professionally, Unity and GameMaker primarily.
Cool.
Not check my framing, but we're just gonna have to live with it.
Need some chatter to test. Chatter, chatter, chatter.
All right. Okay. Well, let me just now try to do. Oh, an idiot. Okay. Okay. I made a very fundamental flaw. I think what I need to do here. I can just give up on the recording. All right. Fine.
Yeah, I can record it. I already got OBS.
Yeah, I'm trying to record it with my phone, so there's a different angle. But yeah, because I don't have multiple screens here, I'm not presenting on a I'm used to presenting with a projector, so I do a specific thing with PowerPoint when I do that, but I cannot. So have to adapt. My apologies. Okay.
I guess so. To that point, we are going to record this. We won't. We're going to try to not get names and stuff or handles. But if you choose to speak, then your voice will be recorded. If you ask a question or something.
Yeah, so we're shooting for about an hour presentation. Most likely it'll be shorter than that because I tend to talk fast. And then we can have as much Q&A as you guys want. This is my whole day, so I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, just apologize. I have not had to do this format before. Okay. No, what? Okay. Why is this not updating? Okay, there we go. Sorry, my phone was freaking out, making me freak out. All right, let me try and present and then stream. So I don't know if I can. What is that? Okay, what is going on? Do you see Bender? Do you see Bender or no?
Yeah, I see Bender.
Okay.
Oh yeah, so Gunnar's he's sharing his screen right now. So click on his name and connect to the stream so you can see him.
Okay, there we go. So you see my face. Yes. You don't have to look at my face, but yeah. Important thing is the PowerPoint. Okay. All right. See Bender? Everything fine?
Yep.
Okay. I apologize for this awkwardness. I haven't had to do this format before. Let me know if the camera should be different, but whatever. So yeah, as I said, this talk we're shooting for around an hour, so like a snack or something. Yeah, and as Rich said, this is going to be recorded, assuming all goes well technically, but please be respectful and listen the first time around. Really appreciate that. So let me ask you something. Have you ever wanted to make your own video games? That's a pretty stupid question on my part, yes, right? You wouldn't be here listening to me if you didn't have some interest in making your own games and becoming a game developer. And in fact, Game developer is one of the most popular job aspirations among modern children. Just as previous generations grew up largely wanting to be actors and musicians, now kids largely want to be game developers or social media influencers. But that's stupid, right? I mean, those prior generations dreaming of being rock stars and celebrity actors, that was just silly, wishful fantasy that certainly didn't coalesce for the overwhelming majority of people. And if game developer is a modern career aspiration alongside YouTuber, streamer, and Instagram influencer, well, then obviously it's not a very valid career path, right? Only 2% of working actors earn enough to make a living, and just as maybe 1 in a million who try become famous actors, what are the odds that you or me or anyone can become a game developer? Well, I'm here to tell you that that's wrong. Like, really wrong. Game development is an extremely viable career path, much more equivalent to becoming, say, a nurse or an architect than becoming an actor or influencer. Game development is a massive industry, larger than Hollywood, music, books, basically all other entertainment combined. If you count the casino gaming, oh boy, it's not only the largest entertainment industry, but one of the largest industries on the planet. And it's not just video games. Of course, there's board games and card games too, but the same skills and technology used in video game development are being used in a plethora of other industries. From Hollywood filmmaking, where the Unreal Engine is increasingly used as the go-to method for filmmaking of the future, popularized by Jon Favreau's incredibly innovative use of Unreal on The Mandalorian, to medical technology and city planning. If you become a game developer, you might very well work alongside nurses and architects, as more and more video game engines are being used to create interactive medical software, helping patients with medical imaging, training doctors and nurses, and even being employed by Big Pharma to better simulate complex chemical compounds and molecules in order to develop new drugs. I'm not kidding. Not that I'm a fan of Big Pharma. I'm really not. But I can't deny how hysterically cool it is that the same software and skill set being used to create Fortnite is right now being used to develop new drugs and cures. Just the same, game engines are increasingly used by architects and city planners, urban planners, to visualize towns, roads, and new buildings. It's obvious how incredibly useful it is to create a 3D version of a skyscraper in a video game engine that you can examine from all sides in 3D space, discuss the structure and design of, and even virtually walk through like you were playing Call of Duty. This all being a major step up from just a bunch of blueprints and PowerPoint presentations to pitch a multi-million-dollar construction project. I myself actually did something very similar to this when I worked in Seattle, where we created a 3D visualization of a new space project called the Atlantis Project, which is equivalent to a space elevator. But in truth, I'm just barely scratching the surface. The skills of a game developer are increasingly useful for every other industry, for training alone, if nothing else. And a good game developer is also just a good software developer, meaning they're a useful asset for any company that needs to use technology, which is everyone. If you can make good games, then you can make really good apps for any business under the sun. And if you consider where we are, where I'm giving this presentation from in Las Vegas, well, obviously the casino gaming industry is the primary industry of our city and state. It's where I work now for the time being, where my background of video game development has provided a seamless skill set to amazing career opportunities. I could go on, clearly, about why game development is a viable career path, but I want to recommend it to you and hopefully help you to become a game developer yourself, not just for healthy job prospects, but because I think game development is one of the best things you could be doing with your life, especially while you're young, for more personal and emotional reasons. I'm a very honest person. I tell the truth as I see it, often to my detriment. So I'll be frank. We don't live in a great world right now. I'm sorry to be a downer, but the truth is that many things in our culture are going very wrong. People are unhappy. Our economy is nosediving. Escalating censorship and authoritarianism, social media addiction, political hyperpolarization brought on by social media algorithms, corrupt news complex, shrinking middle class, hyperinflation, rising gas prices, people dying overseas. All of these bad things are because we're coming out of one of the most prosperous periods in human history, which, as far as we know, is the history of the entire multiverse. Many of the bad things we see happening in the West now, they've been happening in the East for a lot longer. Japan and South Korea have long been ahead of the US in terms of culture, where we see incredible economic prosperity rising in lockstep with a lack of social cohesion, higher depression, anxiety, alcoholism, suicide, nobody getting married, nobody having kids, and a declining population, and overall lower levels of happiness and life satisfaction. Again, I'm sorry to be a downer, but my point is this. A lot of people are unhappy right now, which might include you. People feeling no fulfillment, no sense of control, no satisfaction, or even direction in their lives. People don't know what they're doing or where they're going. Too many of the people that I date have no life goals other than watching TV or smoking weed to numb themselves and pass the time. If this in some way describes you, as it does me, or someone you know, it may sound silly, but I sincerely and heartily recommend game development. Humans were not meant to sit around and become slaves to Zuckerberg, Bezos, and Dorsey, endlessly scrolling and consuming the product and doing nothing of note. We're meant to run around, to talk to each other, and most of all, achieve stuff. Hunt an animal as a caveman, build a shelter, rub some rocks together, sharpen a stick, work with our hands, use our imaginations, and build things. Make stuff. Whether that's knitting quilts or wood carving or painting or poetry or game development, I cannot recommend creating something enough. It's the best way to gain a sense of control and satisfaction and direction, improving a skill and creating an end product that you can share with others. I think writing and filmmaking and music making are all great. I do all those things. But game development is kind of the best one because game development combines everything. You can make anything. It's art, it's music, it's writing, it's design, it's programming, it's psychology, it's emotion, it's experience, it's fun. Game development is highly multidisciplinary and often requires interpersonal collaboration, forming relationships and friendships as you work together to make something. And then, once a game is made, you get to share it with others. I made dozens of games as a high schooler, and I'd share them around our computer lab and see the entire class all playing my game, something I created, even though it was very stupid. I've done a lot of things in my life that I'm proud of. I've been in love, I've had wonderful experiences, but honestly, no feeling matches the sheer joy at sharing my game with others and seeing their reactions, seeing them laugh and talk and get angry and have fun. It's an experience I struggle to describe, frankly. So that's my pitch. If you like video games, if you want a competitive skill set that could land you a myriad of good jobs, but more so if you want to make something, share your experience with others, influence others, bring others joy, leave your mark on this world, leave a legacy, and gain a sense of control and satisfaction, I recommend making games. Okay, if I still have you on board after all that, then let's talk about how you actually start making games and becoming a game developer. This is my ultimate strategy guide to making games and being really cool, maybe. But before we go any further, allow me to introduce myself. Howdy, my name is Gunnar Clovis. I'm an amateur motivational speaker and self-proclaimed butthead. I am the most American person I know. I'm a hot-blooded mutt, descendant of immigrants. My genealogy is just everywhere, as if that mattered. I drive a dumb yellow Hummer, and yes, I do shoot guns because it's my name. I'm from Seattle and LA, bouncing around, West Coast boy, amidst vast diversity of ethnicity, culture, religion, and opinion. I grew up in poverty with just about nothing, but I worked hard and got my dream job by 22 after becoming an inventor and getting my first patent at 21 to perpetuate the American mythos of inventing everything. I love kids, animals, burgers, sushi, Chinese and Mexican food, cartoons, D&D, XCOM, Pokemon, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Portal, a bunch of nerdy crap. I'm honest but gluttonous. I'm basically every positive and negative American stereotype actualized. My European friends make fun of me a lot for this. My family business is Eurocycle, the big motorcycle dealership on Sahara. My dad also grew up in poverty and worked hard his whole life. And now he owns and runs that store, that Vegas store, and the 2 other Eurocycle stores in Reno and Sonoma. You might catch me there sometimes if you like motorcycles. I used to help with marketing, reception, and business basics. I spent a lot of time teaching, and I have a lot of experience with event planning, helping with conventions, running clubs and organizations. I co-founded and ran the IGDA Las Vegas, which was briefly the largest tech meetup in Nevada, which I was proud of, hosting events with speakers from companies like Valve, Epic, Discord, PC Gamer. I run the Nevada site for the Global Game Jam every year, and I've run online game jams that have broken the front page of itch.io, which I'm also very proud of. And I make games for a living. I originally was going to go into film growing up in LA, and I have done some film work, but I pivoted towards game design upon living in Seattle and never looked back. Game development to me is the best parts of filmmaking and computer science, very creative and much like puzzle solving. I've made well over 100 games of all shapes and sizes, mostly small games, as you might imagine. I've been making board and card games since I was very young, made hundreds of Portal 2 levels as a modder. I used to make a game every week, both last year and when I was in high school. Been making games for about 10 years. I also used to make daily game dev YouTube videos in Q1 of 2020, but that's neither here nor there. I actually passed on Harvard, Yale, Columbia, the whole Ivy League thing to go to my super nerdy dream university of DigiPen Institute of Technology to make video games. I left partway through to save money and escape my evil ex and started working in Seattle on video games and aerospace, technically. I then had to leave that situation due to family and immigrate to Las Vegas, where I wound up at the UNLV International Gaming Institute Center for Gaming Innovations. Bit of a mouthful. I helped run that program kind of as a glorified TA, but doing as a designer and engineer. And this year, belatedly, left work at UNLV to become a game designer at Galaxy Gaming, where I do basically the exact same thing I did at UNLV, just more. In terms of software development, I consider myself engine and language agnostic, having used a variety of game engines over my life, and even made a few from scratch. However, as of late, my favorite engine is GameMaker Studio 2 or GMS2, a 2D-focused engine used by games like Undertale and Hyper Light Drifter. But that's more than enough about me. Basically, my life story, more or less. I've made a lot of games, and I care a lot about game development, and I push it on anyone who will listen, like an eager dealer. The reason I'm speaking today is because I love to share what I know. I'm big on the golden rule, so I always try to provide others with what I wish I had when I was starting out. I'd love to offer my knowledge and support and hopefully speed some people along faster than I was able to learn, just kind of floundering by myself. I'm also here because I really love Rich. So how do you make games? Well, it's actually easier than you think. You're probably aware of the term game engine. If not, then you would have been confused why I kept using that term the last 20 minutes. Historically, game development was hard, like really hard. I am not exaggerating to say that the skills needed to make games in the 70s and 80s were precisely the equivalent to the skills needed to make rockets fly to the moon. To this day, plenty of the students from my old school DIT go into aerospace because making games from the ground up without a game engine is just math, hardcore calculus and linear algebra, physics and computer science. And that's still true if you're on the cutting edge of computer graphics and physics simulations, making photorealistic faces at Naughty Dog or complex visual explosions in Call of Duty. Working at a AAA game studio, a multi-billion-dollar company pushing the absolute limits of the technology and art, the senior engineers are still doing all that same complex math and physics and will be forever. However, that's no longer necessary to get started and won't apply to 99.9999% of game developers for their entire career, because now all of that hard math and physics has been done for us. Simply download a game engine like Unity, Unreal, GameMaker, or Godot, all downloadable and fully usable for free, and within minutes you can have a playable game. Not Call of Duty, but a game, a real game that you made from your creativity. And that's really all it takes. These game engines are free and mostly very easy to use, with more free tutorials online than anyone could ever really watch. There's not some dark secret, doctors hate 'em, super special, easy way to become a successful game developer. You just make games, which is now easier and more accessible than ever before. My challenge to you is simply to get started. Make a small game within a half hour or less. But, okay, let me be more specific and lay out a detailed plan for you to become a game developer from scratch in less than a month and become a pretty good game developer in less than a year. 1, download a game engine. I recommend Game Maker for beginners, and it's my engine of choice. It's free to use in full. However, you need to buy a subscription in order to export and publish your games, which is just a few bucks a month. Unity, however, is the most popular game engine by far, including with within this UNLV club. Some struggle with its interface at first, but it has the most tutorials than any other engine, and you can export and publish your games using Unity for free. Same as Unreal. You only have to start paying Unity and Unreal once you start making a pretty decent amount of money as a business. They're large enough mega corporations that they can afford to be very competitive in their offerings like that. 2, follow a tutorial for either Pong or Galaga in your engine. No matter the game engine, you should be able to find very basic tutorials for copying simple games like Pong or Galaga. The goal here is to handhold you through your first project. The simpler and shorter, the better. Do not spend more than a couple hours on this unless you're really struggling. Ideally, the tutorial itself should be 20 minutes or less. That's a 6-minute Pong tutorial in Unity. I recommend video tutorials on YouTube, but there are written tutorials online as well if that gels with you more. If you stay after the talk, I can make some specific recommendations for you to get started. For those watching on YouTube, I'll put some links in the description below. I know it may seem like I'm glossing over the most important step, making the game, and that's kind of true. But this is really easier than you think. I'm serious. There are step-by-step YouTube tutorials to help you make a simple game from start to finish for free in less than half an hour. My favorite tutorials get over with in under 10 minutes. Start to finish, every step of the way. You won't understand every aspect of it yet, all the programming, everything about the engine, but that's okay. You don't need to. You only need to do enough to make it work. Finish the game as quickly as possible. Do not overcomplicate it. It's great if you want to be creative and make it your own, but for your first few games, especially, the target is to get them playable and finished ASAP. Don't worry about the art and graphics. You can get into your own art later down the line if you like, or even partner with an artist friend, but right now just ugly, simple programmer art, colored boxes, or free art downloaded from the internet like Kenny assets. More than enough. Now, you may learn here that no game is ever really finished. No video game has ever been completed. Games just ship because the developers run out of time or money and have to fulfill their deadline. There's always going to be more you can do, new ideas, more additions, more features, and maybe some bugs to fix. You're going to have to learn to live with them. Like most any creative pursuit, but quintuply so. Game development requires you to murder your darlings. Just ship it, meaning finish it. Wrap a bow on it and send it off to school. Export it to a Windows executable or an HTML5 application if you can manage it. If your tutorial doesn't show that, ask for help or look up another tutorial about it. As soon as the game is playable, meaning that you or others can play it like a video game, you just wrap a bow on it. You can always come back and add more, re-export it later. Your first game, it's probably going to be bad, a bit boring, but that's all right, because, in fact, that's awesome. Because if you've done all that, then you've just made your first video game, and you are now a game developer. Step 3, upload your game. This one's tough for people. I need you to share your game. Game development is more than most other creative mediums is meant to be shared with others. Once you have a semi-playable exe, upload it to a website called itch.io. You could also use GitHub or some other site, but I really recommend itch.io. This is basically the mecca for small indie game developers and game jams. You can make an account for free in 2 minutes, just like any other website. I'm sure you're smart enough to figure it out. Then hit the drop-down bar in the top right and say upload new project. There are a lot of details here you can look up or figure out. You need a name for your game and you need to upload a file. And you should ideally do things like customize the web page, colors, add screenshots, write a description with the controls, stuff like that. But really, if the game is publicly downloadable or better yet, playable in browser with HTML5, you're good. Then share the link to your game. Share it in Discord, share it to your friends, your family, anyone you can. See their reactions. Again, this will be a simple, unoriginal game, just a copy or clone of Pong or Galaga, but it's something you made. And you've taken your first step into game dev. The reason this third point is so vital is that it really helps motivate you. Even if it seems scary or embarrassing to share your probably unfinished work. Maybe it's buggy, maybe it's bland, it's not your best work, that's fine. Put it out there anyway. Let it serve as a record of where you've come from and how far you'll go. I swear by anything you want me to swear by that having your first game to look back on years later is a priceless blessing. Unfortunately, a lot of my first video games are lost to time, made on old high school computers long since wiped of my student account. I wish I had known about itch.io or a similar site back then. I wish that someone had given me this direction. I did start sharing my own games later on, as I mentioned, but I didn't at first. No one told me to, and that remains one of my deepest regrets. Sharing your work is immeasurably satisfying. It might be scary, but you'll learn so much, and someone will really enjoy it. Like all art, games are subjective. It's impossible to please everyone, but it's also nearly impossible to please no one. In my experience, itch.io is such a kind and supportive community, especially to brand new game devs making their first games. Just say you're new, say it's your first game ever, say that you followed this tutorial right here. People will understand and will probably congratulate you for it, especially if you share it with supportive communities of like-minded beginners like this UNLV club. All right, step 4, repeat. Make a series of small games, really small games. Copy Pong, Galaga, or Space Invaders, make a Tetris clone, Crossy Road, Flappy Bird, all of the most basic 2D games you can think of, which all will have plenty of tutorials online to follow. Continue to make them fast, small, and simple, but try to add your own spin just a little bit more each time. If each game takes only a few hours, within a week or two, you could have almost a half dozen or more games under your belt. Once you do, you'll feel so much more accomplished and competent and gain motivation shockingly quickly. After that, continue to make small games, but scale them up just a little bit at a time. Start trying more original ideas. Once you've made a dozen simple games, you should feel much more comfortable with your game engine and its inner workings. If you want to approach this more seriously and academically, you can really grind into tutorials. There are a lot of long-form free tutorial series with dozens of videos going over game programming from the most minute level. You could spend months, if not years, studying Unity and C# code in beginner and intermediate tutorial videos, and that's not a bad idea. However, I do really want to emphasize the importance of completing projects. Don't get stuck in a rut of following endless tutorials, nor in a mode of only learning but not doing. Make actual games, start to finish, as frequently and consistently as possible. After you get your feet wet, I would recommend making weekly games for 1 to 2 months. Spend as much time as you want on each one. They could be 3-hour games that you make every Saturday morning, or they could be more like 20-hour games that you put a consistent amount of time into every day for a week. Obviously, the latter category will end up more polished, better products, and you'll learn faster by doing more. But don't push yourself too far lest you get burned out. I actually have a semester plan for a series of weekly game projects meant for a university setting, made for this UNLV club a year ago. a 14-week standard semester program that you can do completely by yourself, but it's all right if you want to collaborate with others too. It'd be best if you have a buddy or two to do it alongside, making a friendly competition out of it each week. It starts with simple games that Galaga Space Invaders clone, then a Pong Breakout clone, and gently escalates you through more and more complex game clones and genres at an easy pace, ending with FPS games and chess and multiplayer games. Those might seem totally unreasonable at the outset, but I promise, if you followed this program for a semester, you'd very comfortably get there. However, if you don't want to formalize it quite so much, a weekly game jam for a month or two is excellent. I recommend joining a game jam on itch.io. A game jam is an event where game developers make games from start to finish in a limited time frame, usually 48 hours, but it can be any length. There are daily game jams, 3-hour game jams, month-long game jams, and week-long game jams. I recommend the weekly game jam, just as it says on the tin. This is a free game jam with a large supportive community hosted every week on itch.io, but there are so many more. Mini Jam, Godot Wild Jam, Tri Jam, Ludum Dare, Global Game jams for every topic and engine and genre you could think of, all the time, worldwide. Not to mention the massive game jams hosted infrequently by big companies, studios, and game dev YouTubers, most famously the Game Maker's Toolkit Jam. You can exponentially increase your game dev skills by doing these jams consistently, and even find friends and collaborators, and maybe even a small audience of fans. Don't let these games get too complex. Really try to not miss your weekly deadlines to ship a game. And even if you do, consider just calling it a wrap on the game anyway and moving on, really. Once you've made these weekly games for a bit, while it always remains a good practice, I encourage, even for veteran developers, you should start to think about progressively larger projects. Upgrade from a weekly game to a game that you spend 2 weeks on, 3 weeks on, a month, 2 months. Carefully ladder up. This will actually get harder, as you'll find it tough to control your scope. Scope is the size and complexity of your game, and it's why projects fail. Everyone has big ideas and big dreams for their amazing game, and these ideas inevitably always balloon into a massive, overscoped, overly complex game that's impossible to actually get finished. There's limited time and resources to get things done, so, as I said, you have to kill your darlings and carefully manage your project scope, as hard as that is. That will always be the case. It's always hard to manage scope from beginners to veterans, but especially so when you intentionally start inflating the scope up from weekly games. But try your best. This will be an invaluable skill set for your life and career, no matter where you end up. After you make progressively larger scoped games, simple, finished games, like a top-down shooter with some of your own fresh ideas, a visual novel with a decently sized branching story, or a platformer with a couple dozen levels, now you might try making another game, a game you make in 3 months. Still relatively simple, I'm not talking about League or Animal Crossing, but a mobile game or an abstract puzzle game with 30 simple, easy-to-make levels, something like that. But polished and in a state that you're more or less proud of. Then try publishing it, not to itch, but to Steam or the App Store. This is its own can of worms you'll have to learn, and it's not free. It costs $100, not much, but something to ensure you're serious about this and not just trolling. Expect to not make any money back. This is just for your own sense of self-accomplishment or for your career. It might take a few weeks to go through the whole process. You might have to learn a smidge of law and business, but it's okay. There are free tutorials for that too. Lots of resources to help you achieve this. Put something on the App Store, the Google Play Store, or Steam, just something playable. If you put on mobile, you might have to learn how to install ads on your game. There are tutorials for that. Once you've done that, you're now a professional game developer. You have something online that people can buy. While it's not in any way likely, it's now theoretically possible for you to strike it rich if your game blows up. Again, do not expect that in any way, but it's technically true. If you want to actually make money doing this, that requires serious investment into learning small business and marketing, which is far outside the scope of this presentation. But you're a professional game developer now. And this move will not only be a bucket list item and drastically boost your confidence, but it will open so many doors for you, new collaborators, fans, and employers. The reason behind all these small games, if you follow my plan here, you should end up with easily a couple dozen games under your belt of various sizes and quality levels, which will improve your skill and increase your confidence, but it will also help you build a portfolio. If you want to work in the game industry, you need a portfolio. A bachelor's degree in CS or something is cool too, particularly if you're trying to get an entry-level job at a large game dev corporation. But portfolios are really the most important thing by far. I don't have a degree. I dropped out. I was poor, and it was costing me a lot of money. I'm still in $120,000 worth of student debt, but I still got my dream job pretty much right on schedule because of the work I've done. My patent, my games, my resume, my portfolio, and my skill set. All earned through hard work of just making a lot of games. But fun, hard work I love. You don't need to drop out of college like me, but you do really need to build a portfolio if you want to make it anywhere significant and get good at this. After your 3-month game on Steam, I'd then recommend repeating the process with a 6-month game. All of this is very achievable within a single year, if you try. It just takes commitment, a bit of discipline, effort. Don't make excuses about why you're too busy, especially to yourself. You can do it. Just a few hours a week is all it takes. Work with your schedule. It's hard, but it gets easier as you go. After that, you'll pretty much be an expert, and you can decide what you want to do. Publish more games, likely get a good job if you try. Do more weekly game jam games, give talks like this to the next generation of developers. You can do this plan by yourself, making it on your own every step of the way, no one telling you what to do. Your ideas, your designs, your art and code as a one-man or one-woman army. Or you could team up with friends. Maybe just focus on art while your buddy does the code, or vice versa. But keep in mind that teamwork is a very difficult skill all on its own. I would recommend you cultivate that skill at some point. Try to work on teams, but personally, I would not recommend working on game dev teams until you've made at least a half dozen games by yourself. Feel comfortable with your own skills, and then try to match up with others at a similar skill level. It can be very hard to find a team you gel with, and making games is still hard, especially when you introduce conflicting visions from multiple team members and budding egos and codependent schedules. Don't be discouraged if some team members don't work out, especially your first few. Just keep rolling the dice, making friends, be kind and courteous and professional to everyone, don't burn bridges, and eventually you'll find a dream team you synchronize perfectly with. I would also recommend making a diversity of games. Don't just keep making only platformers or only shooters or only puzzle games or only story-based games. Make a variety. You'll learn more that way, construct a better portfolio, and you're far less likely to get burned out. Pick a game you love, especially another small indie game from a game jam on itch, and try to copy it. Learn from it, see what you like, mix and combine different genres in weird ways. You might come up with something really brilliant. Also, use a variety of tools. If you're doing all the programming, over time, try different game engines. Make a handful of games in Unity, a handful of games in GameMaker, a handful of games in Unreal, a handful of games in Godot, a handful of games in Construct, everything else you can. If you're a CS person, after a couple dozen games, maybe even try to make your own game engine in C++. That's really hard, but there are tutorials for that too. Trying more engines will be more difficult. You'll have to relearn some things, especially at the start. But similarly, it will help you learn a lot, avoid burnout, give new ideas, and make you really attractive as a prospective partner or employee in the future. And as you experiment with a diversity of engines, you'll find what you really love to do and which engine gels with you best. Try new game jams, try new art styles, try new skills, try to make music. There are tutorials for that. Try new programming patterns even. Always be learning. However, don't be tied to just your computer screen. As I said before, games are an incredible medium for spreading joy and ideas, fun, emotions, and experiences. And while it's great to love games and to love making games, do other things too. This is getting a bit more abstract and hippy-dippy, but in truth, the best games are not founded just in remixes of your favorite games and media, but in real-world experiences that you're trying to express, capture, and share with others as best you can. Experience life to help drive your game design. I do a lot of stupid things with my friends, and we'll write down funny things they say to use as dialogue for an NPC in a future game. I do things like hiking and volunteering and LVRM and garner emotional experiences, connections I can try to emulate into a playable form. You can see these kinds of real-world experiences driving game design in many indie games, from Super Meat Boy to That Dragon Cancer. My friend Tim Ruswick's game, Philophobia, is based on his personal experience with a toxic relationship. I've done similar works, but even something as mundane as recreating the boring, frustrating experience I had trying to save a hummingbird trapped in my family's garage as a teenager. I made this dumb little micro game, No Hummingbird Left Behind, in less than 2 hours, and yet I'm really proud of it because it perfectly encapsulates my emotional experience trying to save that stupid hummingbird. Thankless, cramp-inducing, boring, repetitive, unknown how important or impactful it was, but it still just felt like the right thing to do. And while that game certainly isn't ever going to become very popular or break any records and maybe not even really move someone, it's special to me due to how it captures my personal experience. But this idea of translating life experiences and feelings to games is not just a cringy, esoteric movement in indie games. It's integral to good games. The Sims by Will Wright was inspired by Wright's experience from the Oakland Berkeley firestorm. He lost his house and all his stuff. As he had to repurchase all of his family's physical possessions, it made him ponder the meaning of happiness and its relationship to earthly possessions. Why do we think something will make me happier? This directly inspired the emotional design of The Sims as you map and identify what items satisfy pending physical needs, while the grander question of what's the point carries through. Pokemon, by the numbers, the most successful and popular brand in human civilization, was inspired by its creator Satoshi Tajiri's personal experience of catching, collecting, and raising bugs as a kid. You might not recognize Tajiri's name, but he's who Ash is named after, Satoshi in Japanese. He originally created the breakout success of Pokemon to express his feelings for that time of his life, this grand adventure of catching them all and making friends and raising little pets. Perhaps more recognizably, Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of so many powerhouses from Mario to Zelda, he used and uses the same technique in most of his game designs. Similar to Tajiri, Miyamoto created the original Legend of Zelda out of his happy memories and emotions of exploring the forests and caves around his childhood home as a kid. Zelda captures the feeling he had finding secrets of the natural world where everything was new and exciting and possibly dangerous. There are so many more things we could talk about, but we're veering outside the scope of this presentation. I hope I've left you with some inspiration for why to try pursuing game development, even if it's just one creative hobby out of several for you. And I adamantly believe that you can do this. You just have to try. It's hard, but it gets easier. I fully believe that if you follow the plan I've laid out for you today, making small, simple games, weekly games, a diversity of games, slowly building up to progressively larger and larger scoped games bit by bit, you'll not only become a game developer within a week, but become a really good professional game dev within a few months to a year. It's never too late, nor too early to start. You have the time. You can do this. I think you should do this. Thank you. Okay, so I apologize. Yes, the technicals of that, not the best, but.
Hey, good job. Claps, snaps, and claps for Gunnar in the chat.